Okay, welcome to our second workshop for fall 2020. This is the University of Waterloo Tape Music Club, and today we're going to get to set up and use this thing I created. It's called the Stochastic Tree Sequencer. I'm sure this idea exists out there in other ways, but it was one that I've always wanted to sort of mess around with. I really like structuring randomness, and so you're going to see that we're not just going to have pure randomness, but we're going to have some structure to our randomness. That's where the stochastic thing comes in, and you're going to see that the idea of a tree and a sequencer will all come together in this tutorial. So I'm excited to get started. As always, make music, love each other, stay safe, do all that good stuff that we need right now more than ever. Okay, so to do this, you don't need a lot of software. You need two things, really. You need the sample code I've provided, and you need this software synthesizer of some kind. I'm going to use Helm. Helm, there's a link for it here on the website, so you can download Helm there. You'll get bumped to a page like this. It's free, open source. You can download it for any platform, and basically it's a synthesizer you can use to make sounds. The other piece of software you need is p5.js. This is a JavaScript library. You don't actually need to download it because it doesn't need an environment or a program on your computer to run other than a web browser and just the files themselves. So you can download p5.js or you can just download my files. Functionally, it's basically the same thing. So try and check it out. If you need more info though on how to use p5.js or want to see its possibilities, go to that website. Great website. They've got all the info you need. And you can do a lot of cool stuff using sort of the processing syntax. So there's a program we use before processing. It's pretty easy. There's lots of support for it. But now you can deploy it to a website using this p5.js thing, which is cool. Okay, so we've got p5.js. You'll get these files if you click on this thing. So if you click Stochastic Tree Sequencer 4layer.zip, this is all you need besides the synthesizer. So we're going to be running STS, the Stochastic Tree Sequencer, locally. We're going to that means doing it on your own computer, but it's actually JavaScript. So what it means is it can actually run on the web. And so you'll find a link here to the Stochastic Tree Sequencer. There it is. It's sequencing, amazing. So we're actually going to show how do we build this thing and how does it work and how do we get it to do stuff. Okay, so we're going to close that first, though. So we'll get there, but that's sort of the end product. So theoretically, you don't have to download anything. You could just go to this version of the website, and you will see all this stuff happening. One big note is that when I clicked on that page, you saw stuff happening. That page only sends MIDI data. And if you don't know what MIDI data is the musical information a computer uses to send messages from, let's say, a piano controller or a drum controller or other programs to each other, the messages they need to make music. So there's two parts here. There's making the messages saying play this note, play that note, play this note at this time, play that note at that time, and then something on the other end that receives those and says, okay, I'm going to turn that note into sound that we can hear. The STS is creating the messages that are saying play this thing, play that note, play that note. And then our synthesizer, Helm in this case, but really any program you have that can make sounds on your computer that uses MIDI, is going to be the other end of that. And it's going to take those messages and turn them into sound. So the first thing that you need to do, though, before we get started, so download this thing. If you download that, you should see a folder that looks like this. It's got a few files in it. There's only two that we actually are going to care about: index.html. This is the one that is sort of the wrapper around the thing that we're going to do, and sketch.js. Sketch.js is the actual code we'll use. Index.html is the web page that we're going to use to display that code. So let's take a quick look at that actually before we get too deep. So just open those in your favorite text editor of choice. I like Atom. It's a free open source one. And so here is sketch.js. And so this is our code. This is all of the code that we're going to use to create that thing you saw on the other page there. It's pretty long. It's not super long. I think it's like 1,000 lines or something, 850. The other file is index.html. This is really short. So this is the website. This is the web page that we're going to display our sketch.js on. And you can see that basically there's some stuff that's standard for creating a web page here, and then we could just call our script, and that's all we have. This is going to create a really simple web page. But if you wanted to put some really nice looking pretty stuff around this or other interactive stuff around it, you totally could. And you could embed this sketch that we're going to create here, the STS, in any web page you want, which is kind of cool. Okay, so index.html, we don't really need that one, so I'm going to close that one. But this is our other big program here. So we've got our code here. We've got a web page set up. We've got all the files downloaded over here. The next big step that you need to do is create the ability to talk between this code and our synthesizer program. So you downloaded and installed it, Helm. Here is Helm. We downloaded and installed that. This is what it looks like. And so we basically need to get the messages that this program creates from here over to Helm. And if we can do that, then we've got music happening. The way to do that is to send MIDI messages, musical instrument digital interface messages, from the computer to a bus to Helm. And so what we need to create is this thing called a virtual bus. The virtual bus, again, is going to let us send messages from our computer to itself, but we have to use this bus in the middle to make that connection for things. And so on Mac, it's really easy to set up. On Linux, I think it's fairly easy to set up. There's a good link here that's been provided on the web page too about how to set up a virtual MIDI bus. This is by a company called Ableton. They do really cool music stuff. The virtual bus is, again, being used to send messages between different applications on the same computer. And so there are some great instructions here for Mac and Windows. I'm on a Mac. I'm going to show you how to do it on a Mac, but the instructions are here for Windows if you need it. So the first thing that you need to do, like they say here, is launch Audio MIDI Setup, and then click in the window Show MIDI Studio. When you do that, you'll get something that looks like this. I have a whole bunch of MIDI devices because I plug lots of stuff into my computer, but the only one you really care about is this thing up here. It's called the IAC driver. If we double click that, we can see that it's available. That's great. It's online, and we can see that we've got some ports here. The device name, IAC driver, leave it alone. The ports, you can create multiple ports, so you can have like multiple virtual buses on your computer, but you really only need one. And so I've just got one here. If you have nothing here, you have to click plus, and you can add one, or you can delete them, you can rename them, all those things. So you can like click on it and rename it. But I'm going to leave it as sort of the default IAC bus one. I'm going to apply that. I'm going to make sure the device is online. And yeah, we're good to go. And because it's colored in here, because it shows as like not grayed out, it means that it's working and it's available. And so we're going to see that that's going to be the bus that we're going to send messages on in our program here in a second. So follow the instructions. All of them are here. And again, there's some links for you Windows people about how to set this up. Get these things working on your computers on Windows. Linux, I'm sure you can Google and find some Linux stuff too for the Linux people out there. I know I've got it working on my Linux computer. I forget how I did it, but something along those lines. Okay, so there, we're doing good. We've got our program set up. We've got our code base going. We got our program here ready to run. The question then becomes, how do we get this thing to actually do something? And so the simple answer is that we need to run this website, this web page, index.html. We're going to have to use Chrome because we're going to use this thing called Web MIDI. So if you just double click it, you should see something like this if you open it in Chrome. If you don't have Chrome as your default browser, right click and get it to open in Chrome, and you'll be good, sort of thing. So make sure that you open this in Chrome. The reason for that is that it supports this thing called Web MIDI. Web MIDI is a library or an implementation of a standard for sending messages using the MIDI standard over the web. So we got to use Chrome because it's the only one that actually does it. I think some other browsers can support it, sort of thing. And if you run into any issues here, you might have to check your Web MIDI is turned on in Chrome. That would be the one suggestion to think about. Okay, so we've got our program running. That's cool. We've got this thing happening. If you run this in Chrome, right now it seems like it just works. But there might be an extra step you might have to do. So on Mac, in Chrome, latest version of Chrome, it seems to just run by itself. But there's actually a step that you might have to do, because the file that you've got here, index.html and the sketch.js, they actually need this thing called a server to run. And so if I put it on a web server, the web server is going to basically run the JavaScript and do the actions that are asked of that JavaScript. If you just run it natively on your computer, locally on your computer, there's not necessarily a server running. It seems like Google Chrome now does support a server automatically, so it runs JavaScript automatically, but that might not be the case for everybody. So how do we set up a local server and get that to happen? Well, there's some instructions here that are available. So this is linked on the website, so do check that out. You can see all the stuff happening here. And so set up your local server. It talks about how to do it. There's many different ways to do it. I'd probably suggest you'd use the Node HTTP server. I think that's probably the most robust. And if you're getting into development, Node is a great way to work with JavaScript. And so basically you set up a command line thing. You launch a server by pressing a command at your command line on the terminal, and you can get things to run. This will basically create this server. It's going to be a local server running on your computer. That local server can then run the JavaScript. The JavaScript can then do all the cool things that you want it to do. So that's it. That's all you got to do. Set this up. I'm not going to go too in depth with this. There's good instructions here. Hopefully you don't even need it. There are some other options like an extension here as well. So check that out. The link is on the website as well. Okay, I think that does it. I think we've got everything set up and ready to go. So I'm going to leave this video here. Take your time, get things set up, and hopefully you can see some stuff like this happening on your screen. If it's not happening, there's a problem. Go through the steps, try to do some of that troubleshooting and see what happens. But worst case scenario, you can always just go back and try to run this on the web server. This is like running on my web server, so the same website you loaded UWTMC.com from, and it should work on your computer as well. Okay, in the next video I'm going to talk about the code and how it works, and then I'm going to give you a demo of how these things all come together. Okay, thanks for tuning in. See you in the next video.